Got Mark Terry coming. Yeah, I'm Mark Carrera Guy. I'm sitting here in Bury St Edmunds. We've got a London office, which is down in Hoxton. Civil Society Consulting. We're a community interest company. We've been going for quite a few years now. And we sort of started up the idea of a coffee club as part of the pandemic, really, because we wanted to bring people together. We wanted to connect people together in civil society. And we were doing quite a lot of work up and down England around helping different communities, different organisations do work to survive that pandemic. And we got involved with a lot of different organisations and people and leaders in doing so, and that was really great. So we've just tried to keep this sort of going as an opportunity for people to connect, actually, and learn about what we're doing and how we can share what we're doing with yourselves. And we try and meet every couple of months. So put in the chat, actually, your organizational links, where you are, your website, any questions that you've got, any thoughts that you've got, and we'll try and bring them into our session with us, with you today. And tell people where you are based. I've mentioned some of the names, some of the locations of the people that I know that are coming in the room on that. And yeah, so we think that faith-inspired social action leaders are really quite important to the well-being of life in the UK. And we really believe that they can not just do lots of good social action on the ground around food banks or around advice centres, around supporting their communities, but also how they can tackle loneliness and how they can really foster social connectedness, which is what we're about as an organisation. So this session, we're going to be sort of focusing on the work that we've done around loneliness. We were really pleased to get a small grant from the National Lottery called Know Your Neighbourhood. We've been doing some work which Natasha's going to be outlining in just a few minutes in quite diverse parts of the country, actually, in the northwest and in the east of England. And then we're really delighted to meet with Zara Mohammed, who's the General Secretary of the Muslim Council for Britain. So we'll be speaking to her. And then at 11:30, we've got David Knox join us in the coffee club to talk about the new strategy that the lottery launched earlier actually the beginning of June. It's about 3 weeks old, I think. And he'll be able to take some questions from you. So without any more ado, I'm going to pass over to Natasha to talk about the work we've been doing around loneliness, and then we'll talk to you, Zara.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, and so good to see everybody here. We've scooped up some newbies with today's topic, so I thought I would reintroduce Civil Society Consulting to anyone that doesn't know us. So we're a non-profit. We're also based in East London. Someone mentioned East London earlier. And we believe that civil society organisations are the key to healthier, more equal and more cohesive and harmonious communities. And our mission is simple, yet often seems pretty complicated, which is to support, catalyse and empower those organisations by being very good but very affordable consultants, or thanks to the National Lottery, providing support that's totally free through a programme that's close to our hearts called Steps to Sustainability. And yeah, Mark's kind of already said some of this about we host these virtual coffee mornings roughly bi-monthly. It started as a way of bringing together all those grassroots organisations that are receiving free support through Steps to Sustainability, but it's kind of blossomed into this more general get-together, yeah, good people from different corners of the sector. And the idea is for it to be really low pressure, informal, inclusive, enjoyable, and as conversational as possible. And so today is the first of a series of 3 that we're theming on loneliness. So we've just finished delivering 4 loneliness trainings, 4 2-day loneliness trainings in 4 areas to 45 grassroots organisations and some people from the public sector as well, in Greater Manchester and Norfolk. And basically the background to this is that 2 years ago, the Campaign to End Loneliness commissioned us to develop a loneliness learning program. And this year, after a long wait, we were finally very delighted to start delivering it. And then kind of on the back of this training, this series is on key themes that have come up from the loneliness training, partly aimed at the organisations who receive the training, but also, you know, obviously opening it up to a much wider community. And so we've got two more, one on, today's obviously about the role of faith organisations in loneliness, and the next two will be about youth loneliness and loneliness in men. And I wanted to open by telling you a little bit about the loneliness training, and I guess some of the basics of the theory that we're building off. So we start the course by learning about the theory and psychology of loneliness. So I actually thought I might pop the definition in the chat, because if it's something you're new to, it's a bit of a mouthful. But loneliness is a subjective and unwelcome feeling that's caused by a mismatch in your social network between, you know, the relationships that you have and the relationships that you desire or expect. So there's a discrepancy between the quality and quantity of relationships that you have and those that you expect and desire. And this definition helps us to identify two different types of loneliness. So there's social loneliness, which is often more about the quantity of relationships and how isolated someone is, and then emotional loneliness, which is maybe more about the quality of those relationships and the emotional connection that somebody feels. And then there's also different degrees of loneliness. So short-lived loneliness might prompt you to you notice you're a bit lonely and you go and make some more connections, reach out to people, and that would be transient loneliness. But loneliness often, because of the symptoms of loneliness, actually sort of counterintuitively can cause you to not connect more with the people around you, and then loneliness becomes chronic and causes some very considerable psychological distress and behavior changes, and really affects mental health and health. And then the second part of the training is really about kind of what we can do, particularly as civil society, to tackle loneliness. And basically loneliness is such a personal experience that everyone's journey out of it is going to be pretty unique to them. But in one way or another, lonely individuals need to pass through connector services. This is a connector service that identify them, reach them, sort of diagnose what's the cause of their loneliness and what the solutions might look like, but then also actively supports them to access their direct solutions. And direct solutions themselves are activity or programs that bring people together, either so that the quality of their relationships in someone's life can improve, or the quantity can improve, or maybe some psychological interventions that might help change how somebody thinks about relationships, and changes their approach to things. So I hope that gives kind of I mean, it's a long training and it's complex stuff, but I hope that gives kind of a nice basis to then talk about the role of faith organizations. And we've picked this topic because we believe that faith organizations are really notably well placed to tackle loneliness, kind of in light of a lot of that theory. My background's in evolution, and I can't help but look at kind of our history as a species, and we've always had faith. You know, potentially psychologically, it's something that we've really come to rely on. So I'm very excited to hear everyone else's perspectives, and I will pass back over to Mark to introduce Sarah and kick us off.
Thank you very much indeed, Natasha, on that. I think on Zara, on your website, you say that, you know, you're a proud Muslim woman who really wants to provide leadership in society, and be part of the change that you want to see in the world. And that's why I think we were really pleased to see you today at the Coffee Club. Can you tell us a little bit about your role and also the work that you're doing with change makers, because people might not know about that, and that's really quite an exciting part of connecting certainly young leaders.
Yeah, well, is it still morning? Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm in sunny and rainy Edinburgh today at the Royal Botanical Gardens. So it's really quite a nice coffee shop setting. I found a nice tent to be in. So my story is a little bit of a different one. In 2021, Muslim communities decided to make history and elect me as the first ever female and youngest Secretary General, and also the first Scot. And I guess kind of changed, shook things up a little bit. Certainly broke the media. Not everybody could quite handle the news, but it was a really exciting time. And 50% of Muslims in the UK currently are under the age of 25. And we also have a growing aging population in line with national figures, which we'll come back to. So my story is coming into this 25-year-old institution, which is the largest umbrella body for Muslim representation in the UK, over 500 organizations from schools, charities, mosques, professional networks. It's really, really diverse, and I'm like the head of it. And I think part of the reason people always ask me, so I was elected at 29, my predecessors averaged around 55. Why on earth would you want to run this huge organization with all this, pressure? You could go into a really nice job. And it's kind of like what all of you are doing here. I think purpose-driven action, one where you can feel this is a moment of change and I could be part of that change. So if a door to good has opened, why wouldn't I take it? And very much obviously faith-centered in that I felt both Muslim communities, which are growing and diversifying, now needed a kind of step change. We needed a different kind of energy, but also from our representation and engagement with wider society, public life and politics. How do we bridge the gap? How do we make it more inclusive? And some of these issues that we're going to be talking about today regarding, social mobility, social inclusion, these are critical because as we saw from the latest census data, 40% of Muslims in this country live in the most socioeconomically deprived areas. It's huge. And again, I think we'll come back to that. So that's kind of what I do and who I am. And so in terms of the change maker, so I do my own consulting. I loved what you were saying in terms of, affordable consulting, but also purpose driven, because, we're in a different space. My background's in human rights law, and it's not a profitable career, ironically, right? So when you want to kind of do good, that sometimes the cause is just the most important thing, despite your sensibilities. And so for me, I kind of realized that being a first of so many things and being so different was something really powerful. And actually, when you do something different, you want to create a path so others can follow. And so this whole idea of being a change maker was because we need to all be driving a change, right? And to do that, you've got to feel confident about who you are. You got to like yourself, but you got to have a really strong mission. And what I had really bad imposter syndrome for ages. And someone said to me, well, how did you deal with it? I said, I got over myself. I focused on the cause. And I think that's what being a change maker is about in some ways. By focusing on what you need to do or change, you can get over all those things that are holding you back and say, I can do something and help so many. And so anyway, that's just a little bit about myself. I hope that was useful, Mark.
Yeah, very, very, very much so. And I'm just going to put, I will put in the chat your website, and we're certainly hoping to do some work with you going forward, because we think some of the things you've just touched on are really important in that. So, with your hat, if you like, with the Muslim Council for Britain, I mean, what concerns do you have about loneliness as it really impacts not just on the Muslim community, but on other communities, and what sort of work are you doing at the MCB?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is such a huge topic. It was already there, but obviously significantly enhanced by the pandemic. So where you'd have people feeling a bit lonely or down, you've got everybody feeling lonely and down, especially those of us who are very social creatures, and so there's a lot. I mean, to give you some kind of critical insights as to where Muslim communities are and then the general picture. So at the start of this last year, I joined the Commission for Bereavement, the UK Commission on Bereavement. And the reason I joined that was there was significant correlation between death, grief, and loneliness, right? Because what you'd found in the space of 2 and a bit years, particularly because Muslim communities were one of the most disproportionately impacted by generations of loss. So you could have a household, overcrowded household, and one person said that they lost in their area over 16 members of their family, generationally. So that's very, very difficult to cope with. You'd have children, parents, and the whole combination. And so what you found was Islam is a very social religion. We do things together, we pray together, we eat together, we do Ramadan, we do Eid. It's a social religion. And so by its very nature, our institutions and communities, so let me just check where this pinging is coming from. By its very nature, the institutions, the community, everything is designed in a way that you're always with people, your neighbors, your friends, the whole community is always very much together. And so what COVID did though was, well, actually, you're not allowed to socialize with anybody. You can't go to the mosque and you're in a complete lockdown situation. And so what we found is that people have learned behaviors of loneliness, and that cuts across ages. So you've got young people who haven't quite socialized, who therefore don't want to join or go to the mosque or go to community events or projects. You've got elderly generations without family who are also very isolated. So it's very much on a par with what everybody else is going through. But I guess the difference for us communities is that because of the social fabric of the religion, the social nature of it, is that there's loads of outreach, loads and loads of outreach. And just touching on refugees, for example. So just last weekend, I was touring up and down the country. We launched an Eid with Refugees campaign. We realized there was, a huge demographic of refugees that are an awful political rhetoric, actually.
Absolutely.
A significant amount which are Muslim, coming from awful areas all over the world. And we just thought the idea of doing an Eid party wasn't just to have a party or for a good PR exercise, but it was genuinely to offer a place of welcome in spaces we want them to come to so they can have a sense of belonging. And so I'll just give you an example. So I was in Manchester, actually, for the Eid party last Saturday, and we had about 12 Sudanese lads, 16, 17, no English. And most of us were from the South Asian community, so we didn't have Arabic. So I'm thinking, right, how am I supposed to offer a warm welcome to a community that doesn't understand what I'm saying, which is part of our challenge, right, in tackling loneliness? How do we connect to people that are different from a language, cultural, and religious perspective? So I thought, right, well, there's 2 or 3 things that we did. One was food. Food is a great way to break barriers, to, people just warm up. You feed people, you sit together, you don't really need to talk too much. There's a warmth there, right? And the other one was what you say to people and how you make them feel. So I used very basic broken Arabic that I had from my teacher, who was a Saudi Arabian student from university days. And I said, my name is Zara. And I said, first of all, I want to say welcome. And I want you to know that just as you are struggling, there was a time when our parents and our grandparents came to this country, didn't speak a word of English, didn't know anybody, and everybody was looking at them that they were strange and outcast and all the rest of it. And now we're all speaking English, we're all part. So I hope you know that we're going to help you through this. We are part of your journey and you're part of the family. And, and I cracked a few jokes. And it just instantly warmed them. They really felt it. And then we played games. The third thing was games. We had table tennis, which I thought I was good at. Turns out I'm not very good at it. We had pool, we had balloons. So what you do is you find non-verbal way, you find other ways to communicate to people. Obviously, we talked about a kind of vulnerable community, but it can apply everywhere into everyone, which is either you're going to create barriers with jargon and you're going to make it clinical. You're lonely, you're depressed. Who wants to feel like a victim? Who wants to feel like they need help? Actually, if you give people their dignity, their confidence, and make them feel empowered, then that's the best kind of strategy. So Eid with Refugees is a great campaign. Other things, obviously, we're looking to do around the winter, which is around a kind of social, like coffee morning, like a kind of, as you guys are doing, like local initiatives that bring communities together. Health walks is another thing we're looking into, just getting people out in a community way. We've got our Visit My Mosque Day, which is encouraging just the local community, come visit the mosque, build in relationships. I mean, there's lots and lots of things, interfaith collaborations. I visited a kind of a church ministry in Batley. They do an interfaith football match with priests and imams. Because who considers the loneliness and the isolation of people actually? Maybe you're feeling it inside, don't show it so much in positions of leadership or So I think there's loads to do, but particularly in the most vulnerable, it's about honest and meaningful outreach and engagement, and not making people feel like they need help, but actually offering them empowerment opportunities. How we talk about something will directly impact how we resolve it. And what I found in my time is that when you know, in the table tennis example, I was terrible at it, but one of the guys who started playing, they were having a really good match. All of a sudden his English came back. And I just kind of thought, okay, so when people feel that they're at equal playing field, don't they just rise up? So just a very kind of short insight, and maybe quickly on the elderly community is a significant area of concern for us, particularly as it's increasing. Traditionally, we took care of our parents. That model is eroding significantly because of the pressures, cost of living crisis, everybody has to work. And one of the things that I did with some of the charities was around work around hospices. It's a very alien concept to most ethnic minority communities, particularly Muslim communities. We haven't heard of it before. And so we're estranged to it. So there is a lot of work to be done around translation, infographic, and just making information really, you know, like it's all about WhatsApp. If I can read it on WhatsApp very quickly and it's translatable, you know, I'm probably more likely to connect. So what you're finding now is that young people are the gateway to helping older generations.
Very
because
interesting. Yeah.
you need to utilize the young person speaks English, they're IT literate, their understanding of the context in the community, they often have care responsibilities, and they might have a parent who's suffering from mental health issues, who's suffering from isolation. They're really going to be critical to navigating this space and to innovating really positive solutions. So how do I take care of that young person who's maybe dealing with a lot of pressure and stress so I can get to the older person that needs it? And one of the best things that I've seen really happening across the community is just groups that organize little trips, you know, take elderly communities out, show them around. It's nothing new, you know, but these are really lovely things, sewing classes, you know, coffee shop, you know, things that make them feel like they're doing something and learning something, but they're part of the community. And I think the great thing about the Muslim community is we really have a model for community. We're always having occasions to come together, from prayer to festivals, or simply just through this life cycle of the mosque and what kind of happens in it.
Nora, thank you so much for that. There's so much there, isn't there?
Unpack.
And I'm really, you know, and the strength of the community and its faith and bringing that forward in that way, it's really exciting. And it was really good that you were touching on the interfaith side of things there as well, because I know there's people in the room, particularly, you know, the Church of England have spearheaded places of welcome, you know, that idea of you know, everybody within the community having somewhere to be, really, and it's good that you're very aware of that and you're working with that. That's really excellent. Can I ask a couple of people from the room? I know want to ask you some questions. Sadia Akram, who's in Manchester. Sadia.
Hi, assalamu alaikum, Zara again. Yeah, it's wonderful to hear you speak about the Muslim community and the work that you're doing, and I think that's mirrored all over the country, really, in terms of Muslim communities. Are probably the first to kind of, or one of the first communities to want to be able to help because of the nature of their religion, and it is about coming together. You know, you mentioned, and we know that there's a high population of young Muslims, and with COVID impact and kind of the increased social isolation or feeling of loneliness within those younger people, what do you think we are able to give, or to ensure that the services that they're being provided with in terms of that loneliness reduction or even mental health and well-being is reflective of not only them as being young people in the UK, but of a Muslim, you know, faith? So how does that, how do we ensure that we're kind of addressing those needs? Because you quite rightly said that they will be the kind of go-between for the older generation and for the younger generation. But if they themselves are suffering, how do we kind of address that in terms of them and their identities, the multiple identities that they hold?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting question because I think it cuts across maybe 2 or 3 issues, which is one is how do you provide services and support to young people? How do you accommodate or support their religious identity or what might be a bit of a journey for them? And thirdly, how do you support them when they also will have stresses from being a carer, responsible, or whatever kind of loaded pressures? And I think it's all about, and people often say it's about creating meaningful spaces and relationships. So often you can't have a one size fits all approach, but if you can cater for a space, I mean, what's great with young people is sports, it's activity, it's charity work, it's doing things and then talking through it rather than sitting down and let's talk about your feelings, which can be quite overwhelming. Sometimes a lot of people will use, we've got lots of helplines, it's about being culturally aware and sensitive to the fact that that home environment that young person is may not be like your home environment. There's cultural affinities there. It could be that they may be also, I mean, I went to, for example, in Bradford College, who have a significant intake of young Muslim students, and often they will give up further education, some, because of caring responses. They got to get out to work, and financial pressure is a real pressure in a household that is struggling, right? Or it could be that they're the first one to go to university and there's a lot of pressure to succeed. It could be that they're actually facing bullying and abuse at their institution, but they don't know who to talk to about it at home. So there's a multiplex of things that are going on. So if you're wanting to provide a service, and you've got to really understand those issues, and that comes from really like understanding the community, the culture, the religion, but it also is about offering non-judgment spaces. It's about, like I said, that empowerment and action. What we find talking to young people is they want to be treated like equals and partners, not like young people in the kind of, that sense of, well, you don't really know, let me tell you how you need to understand this. And that kind of parent-child. And I often say this to a lot of our institutions in Moss. I was like, young people today will say, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? I can have 1 million followers online. Why do I need to listen to you? Yeah, I can actually cherry pick who I need to take from an advice point of view, and then there's others who are, really, you've got to do the outreach, you've got to do the engagement, and it's getting them in. And the third bit of advice I would say is you need to have brand ambassadors. You need to have success stories. You need to have a digital footprint, and you need to find ways to communicate to young people where they are, not where you are. And they're online, and they're going to listen to their friend who maybe says this is a good service or this is a good place for me to, rather than like your really nice brochure with a young person's face on it. It's that recognition and having honest brokers. And this works across all the kinds of campaigns and works that we do. It's not going to work unless you have honest and trusted brokers. So the MCB is an honest and trusted broker for communities. That gives us the access and the outreach to go all over the country into lots of different pockets and spaces to say, we're here to listen, we want to help, we want to support, share what you're doing. There was another little mental health and youth support service in Bolton that they were offering, and they were like, we're just inundated because there's been so many cuts to youth funding, youth services, but we're determined to do what we can. So we run a boxing class, and that's just a way to get young people in. So I think there's lots of different things you can do, but you can't be amiss to the fact that there are levels of challenge. And maybe it's about having a journey with milestones than trying to tackle the whole thing.
Thank you very much, Sadia.
Thank you, Zara.
Yeah, thank you, Sadia. Thank you, Zara, on that. We've got Kate here from Together Middlesbrough in Cleveland, which is a kind of faith-led organisation. Kate, yeah, you're there. Because you've been doing quite a lot of work in Middlesbrough, Redcar and Cleveland, haven't you, in this area and with different faith organisations. Did you have any observations in terms of engagement with particular faith communities?
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, Zara. It's lovely to meet you. I'd love to connect with you. I've taken down the website details. Yeah, it really resonated with me. Yeah, we set up during the pandemic with the help of CSC, we got some funding and we set up a multicultural forum, which is still going really strong. I say we set it up, it belongs to itself. We don't chair it, we just facilitate it, and it's chaired by different, we've got about 25 BME-led groups who support those communities in our area, who sit on that. And we've done lots of projects together with, linking maybe Hindu groups with Muslim groups who wouldn't necessarily normally, be in each other's circles and work together, which has been really exciting. We've done about 12 projects, which have been brilliant. We've just got some, hi David, we've just got some national lottery money from the Know Your Neighbourhood Fund. And we're starting a project called Brian, which is exactly what you're talking about intergenerational, just opportunities and spaces for people from different generations and potentially different faiths to get together. And that starts in August. It's called Brian. So Beyond Recovery, Intergenerational Activity and Neighbourhood, but Brian for short because it's easier. And the first 2 projects that we're looking at doing, one with older people and younger people from minoritized ethnic communities in our area. And the other one is with older people and younger people who have learning disabilities or special needs. And we triangulate it with a play space so that they've got a church or a mosque or a community hub to meet in, just literally about making those connections that are sustainable beyond the time that we'll be there. And we're finding from this, we're starting to get around a lot of different tables. So we now sit on local family hub implementation boards. We've just been invited to work on a group with the local authorities and the Integrated Care Board, working on hospital discharges, which obviously reflects for older people, particularly in our area. What's the other one we've doing? Looking at some work nationally with some different areas with public health directors and VCS, and bringing in the faith sector through the Together network across the country as well. So some really exciting stuff that's coming up, but it all really resonates with with the lead you're taking nationally. So thank you for that.
You're brilliant. It's so good to hear the work that you're doing. It's so important. And I always think there's just so much to do. There's space for everybody to do their little bit, big or small. And I think you're so right. And there's so many pockets of community that are just left, people are just left to it. And you're just like, well, if we don't take some action, we don't do something, it's going to ruin the fabric of society. It's okay to take care of ourselves, but ultimately we've got to have that holistic thinking. So thank you so much for sharing. It'd be great to connect and see how we can work together.
Thank you. And we've got Nazarene. Nazarene's in Rochdale, Awakening Minds, a community interest company we've done a lot of work with. She said she wants to make some positive comments. Nazarene, you usually do make positive comments.
Yes. So Assalamu alaikum, Zara, and morning, Mark. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you for taking some time out and sharing your thoughts, Zara. It's very inspirational to see women who are out there, beating the drum out there, because you normally have men across the world in terms of faith-based. So that's beautiful to see. Females have a sense of compassion and integrity, and they can detect the non-verbal languages, which is absolutely key, because that's the biggest language right now. We're hearing the loudest screams, but they're silent, and it's a tuned ear and a sharp eye. So well done for picking that up. I have a question. You're doing some fantastic work. I'm curious of how can we as a society integrate technology in order to boost the work that we do? Because the reason I'm saying this is we as an organization heavily emphasizing on multi-generational things. So we do, let's say, example, we have a Dolki night once a month, and young ladies come, but we insist you have to bring a senior female from your home. And if you don't have one, it's your neighbor or your community, whatever. So that's how we do it. But they use tech. And like you said, the advocates of tech. How can we utilize the advantages of technology for our seniors to gain far more independence than they currently have, but with the power of tech? I'm just having some brilliant ideas. I'd just love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, honestly, we're thinking of the same thing, because there's a lack of digital IT literacy, because again, we've got an older generation. But here's one thing everybody is on, and that's WhatsApp.
Yes.
So how it's happening, but they're all on it. They're forwarding, sharing. It's a global, you know what I'm talking about. They're all aunties and uncles. So what we found is that, look, you've got to kind of work at all the entry points of your audience or your user. So on one hand, you know that if it's a short video clip, it's on WhatsApp, if it's easily shareable and accessible for them on the medium they're all good at, phones, that's good. The second is opportunities to learn. workshops, training. I don't know, you want to call it, if you call it training, everyone's on to want training. But if there's a coffee morning and we're getting a quick, and you could make it about, you know, I'm going to show you how to make a blog, or I'm going to show you. So rather than I'm going to show you how to use Microsoft Word or how to, if you can make it so that, you know, it's something they're vested in, or, you know, like, we're going to find out about, I don't want to kind of stereotype what aunties and uncles are into, but if you could find something that anchors them to what you're going to teach them. So if you do this, you can subscribe to your favorite magazine, you can stream, whatever it is, you can watch your videos. But the main thing is you've got to find ways and avenues. Where do they go to congregate? What are they interested in? And also it's that whole value proposition. What's in it for me? Because I have to learn something that's going to make me uncomfortable. It's going to challenge me. It might even make me feel vulnerable or small or insecure because I don't know it, and someone might laugh at me. Oh, you're so old and you don't know that. So there's that. That's the problem, right? We're scared of how the situation is going to make us feel. But if you can say, well, if you learn this, this is going to be, and I would do it in a setting. So one thing is, you know, what medium do they already use that we can just teach them how to use better? And through that medium, we can share messages and communicate. And I think that's WhatsApp, that's on phone, and all the rest of it. The second is, how do we facilitate opportunities for growth? And that is through a coffee morning, a workshop, or some kind of fun way to get them to learn. And then the third thing I think is about your kind of brand ambassadors in those different communities. And there's always one that says, you need to learn it. You know, I call them the hype man or hype woman. And they just know everybody, and they can get 100 people to a party. They can get, you know, everyone's got that. You might be that person. That's really,
I am.
You might be.
I have a feeling you're that person. So you got to use that energy to say, come on, guys, I'm going to show you. We're not going to leave this room until you're all. And you got to remember that, look, people are going to take time. This is going to take time. I think often we're in a hurry because we've got the ideas. I came in with all the ideas and the strategy, and then I thought, well, but is my community where I'm at? No. So let me humble myself and go learn and find out, well, what are they doing? How are they finding it? They've got to fill in forms. They've got to navigate it. How are they doing it? When I opened myself up and took away my own assumptions and bias, I found, okay, there's lots of creative stuff going on here. They're already innovating. They're already finding ways. If a person needs to do something, they will find a way to do it. But often, you know, that chance. So I would say that definitely continue, keep those ideas, but pace it and know that you've got time. You don't need to just do all of it right now. Maybe the milestone is monthly, 3 monthly, half a year. But at the end, we're all going to celebrate because we're going to come really far. So as a national leader, it's literally have to think about everybody else. Like, okay, I want to be here, but we're not all quite there. So maybe we're just going to take our time. And it can get overwhelming because you think you've got to do so much. So I would really streamline and make it thematic. This is, we're focusing on literacy in this area. Then we're going to go to that, and then we're going to go to that.
Hey, look, thank you very much. I've got a couple of contributions. Thanks, Nazarene. Nazarene is on our lived experience reference panel with our lottery funded project. So she's a really good advocate for the sector, and we really value her involvement. I've got, is it Jackie from adoodle.org, community mapping. And I've got Richard Evans from the Joe Cox Foundation and the Connection Coalition to say a couple of things. But we'll, is it Jackie? Jackie?
It's just Jackie.
Jackie, so, sorry, yeah.
No, it just spelt differently. Thank you so much. So
I'm just going to very briefly to be the horrible one that says about time. So we've
we've got David in the room, so we just thank you.
Cool. With what Nazarene just asked, and then with what Zara said about entry points and everything else, and it's just a really quick one, and I'm not trying to sell anything, but community mapping is so overlooked because it got such a bad representation because so many started and then failed and everything else. We've got a platform, so here for anybody who's on here or any groups, it's totally free. Get the projects, the local projects on the map so that people can find them. So there are more doorways. Tell the 5 things that anybody in a community wants to know: who you help, how you help, the difference you make, the help you need, and how to get in contact with you. Share it, make as many entry points so that people can find you. Because we've got these people in our communities who are so isolated, but if they can't find the amazing work you're doing, then they miss out on these opportunities. And if you're providing funding, ask for anybody, ask organizations you're providing funding to, just in a sentence on your application form, create a profile on the map. Costs you nothing, but gets more of those organizations out there to be found by people, because the work I'm hearing you all do and your knowledge is huge. But if people can't find you, they're still isolated.
Absolutely. Thank you. And have you got a web link for that that we can just share?
Yeah, I'll put it in the group chat. It's literally just a doddle.org. So in other words, you're looking for help and support, it's a doddle.
Okay,
Volunteering help. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Richard at the Joe Cox Foundation.
Hi Mark, hi everyone. Yeah, thanks for asking me to just say a few words. I'll be really quick. But we do stuff at the Joe Cox Foundation that Joe cared about, basically, and she experienced loneliness. She saw loneliness in a Batley and Spen constituency, and so we do various projects about disconnection communities, but a lot is about loneliness, and Connection Coalition is one thing. So do look it up if you get the chance. Large network, and like so many things that have been mentioned today, it started during the pandemic. It was kind of a, how can we resist this impending kind of pandemic of disconnection, and we've kept going. Lots of different projects, and some faith organisations involved in that. Linking Lives UK, Muslim Council of Great Britain, Unitarians, Church Urban Fund. And lots of charities as well that started as faith organisations and have moved away from those origins, but the ethos of that faith that started them up. So like S&4Cs in Sheffield and various others, of helping people in the community, the most vulnerable people there. And I was also thinking about, we do great get-togethers and great winter get-togethers, and faith groups seem to underpin so much of so many of those community events that happen each year, and the warm welcome campaign as well. Like we've seen Muslim hikers doing the great walks together, various iftars around the country, inviting people from across local communities in. Lots of churches, Day of Soup in Cardiff, and Waldale Quakers, and lots of interfaith events in West Cheshire, Interfaith Forum, and a boat trip by the Women's Interfaith Network, all part of the Great Get Together. So faith networks, faith organisations and interfaith networks seem to me to underpin an awful lot of these really important community events, community activities, and giving over of community spaces, which, as well as doing lots of work, to combat loneliness, create bridges between people within communities, and that offering of friendly, welcoming spaces in the heart of communities. And the fact that these organisations are always there, there's a familiarity and a trust and a longevity to the buildings, the locations, and the relationships, feels to me really important. So I'll stop rabbiting on, but do have a look, Joe Cox Foundation, Connection Coalition, if you're interested.
Yeah, and you've got lots of, you've got a lot of faith organisations as membership of the Connection.
Yeah, there's a few dozen, and I mean, it's thousands of people, so who knows how many actually. And I'm actually, it's fascinating listening to you all this morning, and I one question in my head, which we don't have to deal with now, I know we've got other speakers, but I'm wondering about the role of faith organisations to help combat loneliness in communities regardless of faith. It's really interesting, and non-faith actually. I feel like there is a really important role, but I'm interested in how that might be done in bridging those divides that might exist in people's heads between organisations of faith and those of others, or none at all.
Well, I think that we'd be very interested in working with you on that, and hopefully the MCB would, because and we've got possibilities coming up on that, Richard and Zara, that we could take that forward, because we think, that's why we wanted the coffee club around that. We think faith organisations, and Zara's been talking so much about that, can bring so much to the table, and it's just kind of there. They can make it happen in a really, really wonderful, beautiful way, actually. But look, thank you very much, Zara, and thank you, Richard. We've got, I think David has been hopefully listening to David. Hello, David. David Cox, the Chief Executive. Hopefully, he's here.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh yes, you're definitely here with your lovely background there. Sorry to keep you waiting, David. I hope that you've.
That's great. No, it's the first time it was a very interesting conversation there, so I enjoyed joining towards the back end of that. Mark, I don't know how you would do it. I've got about 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, we really wanted to see how, how loneliness and social connection fed into your new strategy. Obviously, the new strategy that's just recently come out, and maybe some headlines on that from your perspective, because you're a very important partner to a lot of people in the room here in terms of funding and what have you. Yeah.
And it's great to hear that at least a couple of the speakers so far have had lottery funding, so you'll know the National Lottery Community Fund quite well, I suspect, for many on the call. Look, we just published our new strategy. It starts with community. I'll be very brief. It's a 7-year strategy to 2030 for us, the National Lottery Community Fund. We're a UK-wide funder. We distribute £600 to £700 million of national lottery funding and do other programs alongside that. There's just really 3 core parts of our strategy. One is a very significant commitment to grassroots community funding. We're going to be doubling the size and the length of any award through our National Lottery Awards role. That's a very big change that we'll be saying more about in the autumn. Second part of our strategy is around what we've heard as we've listened over the last year to communities where they want to see some bolder change and longer term change from us. And we've articulated 4 missions about bringing communities together, about the climate and environmental emergency we face, around opportunity for young people, and about health and well-being in communities. And then third, our strategy really articulates our ambitions to be more than a funder. Again, a very strong commitment around our climate work in there, around our equity focus, and we might wish to unpack that a little, and other things around how we all partner and collaborate and work with others on the focus and missions that we have there. So we launched that strategy last month. We've already made a few early funding announcements, a lot more to come. We've thought hard about the balance of what we've learned between responsive and strategic funding through the pandemic, through the cost of living crisis, which we are currently actively very mindful of in our funding approach.
And you've just recently announced, is it the UK fund, isn't it, which is kind of sits very much within this coming together kind of theme and tackling loneliness.
That's right. That's one of our early announcements, is a new fund, and I'll drop it into the chat or something if colleagues here haven't seen it, but a fund explicitly on that mission area around supporting communities to come together, looking at larger size proposals in there. It's from 500,000 upwards, 2 to 5 years, are quite long-term ideas, and the team are ready to talk and hear ideas that people have there.
And one, in your strategy, you talk about disadvantaged areas and equity-based, and there's lots of really good stuff in there. And I really encourage people to look through that strategy and really come, get to grips with what's being said, And I think that a lot of people in the room do really value the relational style to the lottery. I think it's really good, David. I think that would be some feedback there. But are you looking at particularly, targeting some of the really disadvantaged areas? Is that what you're saying within that equity context? Are you talking about specific targeting within the resources that you have?
Thanks, Mark. And look, the relational and local approach, just first on that, was something we really heard very powerfully. And sometimes with strategies, people emphasise the new, but we're actually keeping a lot of things that we have heard as so valued. We are a devolved organisation. In every area, we'll have local funding officers and teams who are there to work with and to start from the strengths that lie inside communities. So just also to kind of emphasize that point you made there. Look, words matter, don't they? So let me just be clear about exactly what we said on the equity side. So there's two parts to it. One is around places, people and communities. So I think that's probably a debate many here will understand, but it's the distinction between communities of place, communities of interest and communities of identity. And sometimes it's natural for people maybe less familiar to think about communities of geography or place. So there's an important difference there. And then we've been very clear about poverty, disadvantage and discrimination. And I'll just unpack those again. So poverty has often been a driver of our work through something called the index of multiple deprivation. So when we think about our funding, we'll often think about a mix of population and IMD. We're moving beyond that to then say we need to work through what that relative funding means around disadvantage. And for example, since we last did our strategy, there's a lot more evidence out there now about some of the deeper and underlying causes and drivers that a sole poverty focus isn't going to meet and address. And then the third bit there, discrimination, really clear about communities of interest that may have experienced structural or systemic inequality and discrimination, and that will be a relative driver for our funding. And fundamentally, we're saying that's where that is a guide for us to invest more on those grounds. Of course, as a national lottery funder, people want to see a breadth of our funding. National lottery players are right across the UK, but that's essentially the distinction that we're making there, and you'll see that play out in all of our different programs. So for example, that UK one you just mentioned there, we've got a particular focus in that around how that reaches both communities that might have been underserved, but also brings communities together that might not have other opportunities to mix and interact. So I think that's glad you've picked up on it because it's a really important part of our strategy.
And as I say, I think it's a really exciting strategy, and we're fully behind it because it meshes very much with what we're about and our mission. I know time's tight here now. Natasha had a question. Natasha?
Well, yeah, I wanted to, I'm keen to keep it all linked to loneliness, although like very, very supportive and interested in the wider strategy. But we were really interested to understand more about what you mean by, what the National Lottery means by sense of belonging, because that's obviously so linked to loneliness, and we can belong to many different things. And I thought it was maybe a nice opportunity to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, great, Natasha, thanks. Loneliness has been a big focus of our work, as you'll know, and continues to be. And when we really unpack this health and well-being, and we were looking at some of the sort of underlying theory of change and evidence that we have behind it, there are some kind of common points that come together, and social connection is something that we see as a real thread between so much of our work. And so the concept of belonging, I suppose, becomes quite a personal one to people. For some people, that might be a community of interest, that might be a community of place, that might be another institution or something. But the sort of the thread behind that is very much around the importance of social connection. And having been involved in the loneliness work in my previous role inside government, I think that both the specific kind of discourse, I suppose, around loneliness, but also what sort of more broadly sits around that about the importance of connection is absolutely at the heart of our strategy and our plans here. And I think the science of belonging is more advanced now, and I think you'll see that more increasingly in our own impact work reflected.
Thank you very much on that. Yeah, that's really an interesting point there. We've got Mohammed from Becoming United, I think in the Northwest. Mohammed.
Yeah, it's Become United.
Yes.
Yeah, basically, David, that's been really interesting. I just had sorry, just lost connection there. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, Mohammed. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just had a question. Basically, it's not really related to isolation, but maybe I don't know if we can pick it up outside of this call. But basically, we've had some kind of discussion with other kind of organizations, specifically like from a Muslim background, and there's kind of like some issues of reason why they're not applying. And basically, I was just wondering, is it possible to have like a catch up to discuss that probably out of this discussion?
Hi, Mohammed. Yeah, definitely. Look, I mean, probably the very best person would be one of our Northwest team there. But yeah, no, absolutely happy to pick that up outside. Perhaps, I don't know if you want to give me your details, or if you want to write,
Yeah.
I'm very happy to join up on that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay then.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and Mohammed, we have done a bit of work at civil society around that particular issue.
Yeah.
And about how some Muslim communities obviously do not wish to engage with the with lottery money for all the reasons you probably know. But so we're very alive to that, and we actually did a piece of research which we can share with you. And
if you can, that'd be great. Yeah, if you can share that, that'd be great, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Look, thank you very much, David. I'm sure you've got a busy day. So it's really nice to see you, and we really wish you the best. And I think it's quite a sincere thing when I can talk, hopefully on behalf of all the people here today and the people that we've been working with on our work programs, how much they value the National Lottery. Obviously for the money, but for the we have to be frank about that. Money is really tight. There's not a lot of it around, but the relational way that we can work with your colleagues, that certainly we do, and we know lots of the groups do, and that localism, which I think is quite powerful, and it's obviously come back from the strategy as a key.
It certainly has, Mark. And look, we're here to serve communities where in a sense the middle point between the National Lottery player predominantly and the communities that we're able to fund thanks to the National Lottery players. So
okay, look, if you can just stay for one more minute, David, because one of my colleagues, Francesca, is going to just say, because we've got a lottery funded project which is now underway. Francesca, are you there?
Yes, hello, hi.
Hi, Francesca.
I just wanted to say a few words about our latest lottery funded initiative. So it's called Kinder Communities Steps to Sustainability, and it's a capacity building program for grassroots organizations led by and for marginalized and disadvantaged communities. We're now providing one-to-one support to our first cohort of organisations composed of 7 organisations across Greater Manchester, Peterborough and London. And I see a few of our cohort members here. So Mohammed, who's just spoken in Greater Manchester, and also Colette in Lewisham, who's also here. I think she's giving us a wave.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Yeah, and you just got a lottery. Go on. Yeah.
Yes, so we've just started doing our kind of one-to-one support with them, and we're also running free workshops on income generation and monitoring and evaluation. And we're meeting up at the end of the month with the cohorts to kind of reflect and share successes and challenges of the program so far. We're also offering professional leadership coaching to up to 15 organisations on the programme, and these will be delivered by Laura, who's also in the call, if she could give us a wave. So if you have any questions about the programme or the leadership coaching, please get in contact with me or Laura, and we'll pop our emails in the chat. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Francesca. Thanks, Laura. That sounds like a great work and a great offer there. So
yeah. Well, I mean, that's some real innovation with the leadership coaching, because we can see lots of really exciting people on the scene who could really do with that. Colette, can you come back, because Colette's just recently got an Awards for All grant, and I think she's really happy. And I just think it's nice to be happy on the coffee club and finish it off on a happy note. Colette, how are you?
I am totally grateful, and I'm really feeling blessed because I've been working in my community for many years without any money. I was working with a lot of passion. And when I get this support from Mark and his amazing team, I know that there's a God, and I am now inspired more than ever. So I want to say a big thank you to the lottery, the National Lottery. My mother from Jamaica, she loved the lottery. So now she knows that, Mommy, you didn't win the lottery, but look what the lottery is doing for us. So I want to say thank you very much, David and Mark and all the team that has traveled throughout the UK to come and sit with me to engage with me, to inspire me, and to empower our journey here in Lewisham. Thank you so much.
Oh,
I'm so delighted to hear that, Colette. Go just check. Is that one of, because we recently gave some funding out for the Windrush. Was it one of our Windrush National Lottery Awards?
no, this was an awards for all. This was an awards for all.
Right, general one.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful.
And it's
I'm
the
so
first.
delighted.
Yeah, it's the first sort of significant grant for Colette's organisation in Lewisham, which is tackling knife violence and violence within so it was a really important decision, I think, isn't it, Colette?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, look, thank you everybody else, and thank you, David. And we hope the Coffee Club will come back maybe in September. If you've got some thoughts or ideas what we should focus on, obviously we wanted to hear from the lottery. We wanted to tell you more about our loneliness work. Thank you very much, David. We really appreciate your time.
Have a good day all.
Yeah, all the very best.